Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, I wanted to cover the healers in Shadowlands 9.1.5 and how fun do I think they are. So a very important component for fun for me is kind of versatility. How many different builds, how many different kind of puzzle pieces can I put together? How unique can I be? And also the skill ceiling. So how far can I push myself? Is it going to have a limitless feel where there's always this pursuit of mastery? Or is there going to be a quick ceiling that I hit that I'm going to become bored with after a certain amount of time? These are very important components for me in terms of fun. And with 9.1.5 update coming out, this now means you can start having some alts. This seems to be a great way to catch up on Renown at the moment with Comp Stomp and Torghast Layers 9, as well as introducing Unvalor Capped or Valor Uncapped, so you can farm Valor for Mythic Plus or Conquest infinitely in PvP. So right now, if you want to try one of these healers, it's going to be ready to go. For me, the healers, honestly, in Shadowlands are a ton of fun. And I think it's actually really underestimated how much fun they really are. Like if you've been trying some DPS specs and maybe getting bored of that, but you're a little bit hesitant to go a healer because you're worried it might be kind of boring, or you're not topping DPS charts or stuff like that. The healers are actually pretty spectacular. There's a couple of them that I think could use a little bit of touch-ups that I'll go into specifically, but overall, whenever I'm thinking about trying to have a lot of fun on WoW, it's actually picking up a healer a lot of the times is going to be allowing me that opportunity. So starting off right with Discipline Priest, they did a phenomenal job with Discipline Priest throughout Shadowlands, and it's still a phenomenal spec to pick up and play. You're going to be really competitive with this spec in pretty much every aspect of the game. Mythic Plus is, again, at the highest end, is dominated a lot by Paladin, maybe a little bit by Shaman, but in terms of raiding and then PvP, Discipline Priest is hyper competitive. Not a competitive list here, but in terms of fun, you're going to feel like you have an infinite skill ceiling, whether it's timing your cooldowns for specific raid mechanics or just trying to maximize your damage along with your emergency healing output to try and min-max your character. You're going to always feel like there's a pursuit of mastery with this specialization. It's all about aggression. It has a very unique flavor to it from the other healers. So if you're looking for a high skill cap, unique experience with some versatility in terms of its builds, in terms of covenant options, which now you can freely swap to once you're up to 80 renown. This is a spec that you really can't go wrong with, in my mind, and I think it's an easy S tier. If you want to pick this up and you want to make sure that you're having fun for a long time, you'll probably never get bored of this spec. You could probably play this spec forever and never get bored of it. I'm actually thinking about picking mine back up now that you can maintain alts better. I had to make a really tough decision between my druid and my priest, and I ended up sticking with druid because it was looking a bit more competitive, but now I'm almost regretting that in terms of competitive choice because RMP is just owning in PvP at the moment. Holy Paladin, this is unquestioned dominant top dog of Mythic Plus with Ashen Hollow. It has a lot of interesting covenant choices for you to try and kind of play with and flex with. And get in 9.1.5, switching your covenants is kind of a big thing. So if you're ever getting bored of one, swapping over to another one, Ashen Hollow is going to give you a lot of all-in potential in PvP. So if you want to try some really YOLO strategies or some really aggressive compositions, that could be a good option for you to have a lot of fun with. If you want to go back to Kyrian for PvP to get more of a standard play of Holy Paladin, then you're going to have that option. And Necrolord was recently buffed, and Vanquisher's Hammer is hitting pretty hard at the moment, so you might even want to check that one out. And then Blessing of Summer also got buffed from Night Fae, so you've got this kind of buffet of covenants for Paladin at the moment to try and experiment on with builds, so I would definitely recommend it for that. The highest competitive level, I think most people are still playing Ashen Hollow for MDI or for Mythic Plus. For raiding, you're still going to offer a ton of damage support to your team, so you're still valuable in raid. In PvP, you start to fall a little bit off because your mana bar just doesn't go as long as the battery life of pretty much every other healer. But if you're focused on playing aggressive comps, particularly with mages and maybe some rogues, then you're going to still have a good time at the highest competitive level. It's still a flexible healer. I think that you can play some melee cleaves like Enhancement Shaman Warrior I've seen, but again, your main limitation is going to be mana. So you've got to be the type of healer that wants to get in there and get things done. With this one, it's more of an aggressive choice. I think that you do start to hit the skill ceiling a little bit sooner on Paladin, while it still has the same type of cooldown timings for raid mechanics or Mythic Plus mechanics, and even for PvP for cooldown trading. Because you're not really casting a lot when it comes to PvP specifically, unlike Discipline Priest, where you're always trying to maximize your global cooldowns. And I think it's mostly Purge the Wicked, actually, that puts Discipline Priest a little bit higher on the skill ceiling for me than Paladin, trying to maintain that damage over time effect while continuing your rotation at all times. Makes it slightly easier to play in my mind, but the thing that bumps it up on the fun list is because it's just got this giant... You're going to try out Venthyr, try to play this all-in build. Maybe you get bored of it. Oh, you can just go to any of the other covenants and try and give them a go as well. So you'll have a lot of playtime on this specialization, at least when it comes to fun and flexibility. The Holy Priest, I wouldn't say that it is as high of a skill ceiling as Discipline Priest, at least when it comes to PvP. Main reason I think that it's held back in PvE is that it's lacking a damage reduction cooldown. That seems to be a major component for healers' viabilities, especially when you're pushing keystones extremely high, because there might be a mechanic that will one-shot a tank or a target with maybe a damage over time effect that you need to reduce the damage of. You can't just heal it, because if it hits the person, they're dead, and your healing does nothing when they're already dead. So it falls off a bit more in terms of competitive viability there when it comes to PvE. In PvP, it's still very competitively viable. It's more of a kind of hit and run strategy oriented healer, rather than focusing purely on kind of maybe dragging a fight out or just going all in aggressive. It has a little bit of flexibility with those options than those other healers. It's definitely more developed now since its recent buffs. It's performing a lot better. What you're going to notice, the fun part of Holy Priest is trying to reset some of your powerful heals or your powerful crowd control effects like Chastise and your Serenity. So you're always spam casting spells, trying to get to your next holy word and reset those, and trying to kind of race against those to keep your team alive, which does provide a unique type of intensity that you don't really get from any other healer. That's kind of the unique effect of it. But a lot of the times you're just immediately covering the target with Serenity, and just waiting and banking those and trying to just immediately top off the team. So it's a little bit easier to play in my mind than Discipline Priest. It's easier to get fears in PvP because you'll have Chastise to lock targets down to then immediately get back to them. So it's easier to play. So the skill ceiling there is going to be knowing when to initiate those stuns. But once you know and you've practiced that, you might end up feeling kind of like you're just kind of stuck in the same cyclic gameplay and repeating a loop. Whereas Discipline Priest, you'll have a little bit more freedom to try and improvise outside of that. I still do think that it's actually a very fun healer, mostly because of the way that its holy words work at the moment and trying to reset those as quickly as possible. So this is going to be a tough list for me, but I really do actually want to put it as an A for healers in terms of how fun it is. Again, this is not competitive. Viability, Mistweaver Monk. This is one where, at least in PvP, it had the unfortunate circumstance of having one of its honor talents robbed by PvE, which was the Way of the Crane. And Way of the Crane now in PvP is just, it's not a talent that you can select. And because of that, Mistweaver struggles to kind of do the type of punching and fist weaving that it used to do, at least in PvP. Its Eminence Legendary not really powerful enough for it to continuously start pummeling its targets. It just feels like it's kind of missing a layer, at least when it comes to PvP. In PvE, on the other hand, the fist weaving builds you'll still feel pretty awesome doing. Again, where you're going to struggle is because you lack a damage reduction cooldown to make those big trades for big boss hits or for damage over time hits. So you will start to lag there, at least if you're interested in pushing high keystones. At the moment, again, you're probably not going to outperform the priests or the paladins because you're not able to do as much damage as them, and that usually ends up being a very important component to the high level rating. In PvP, you're in an iffy spot, at least in arena at the moment. You can play a couple of compositions maybe with some melee cleaves at the moment that I've seen, but it seems to be kind of the hipster spec. But it also just feels like it's kind of missing a layer. You don't have those damage over time effects to try and maintain. In PvP, you're almost immediately punished for trying to do any of the fist weaving, the unique kind of fist weaving that it has available. It's actually a spec that I'm hoping gets kind of a tune-up that we saw some of the other specs in Shadowlands get, which ended up making them spectacular. For me, it's going to fall a little bit short in terms of its overall fun potential. Just because it feels like it's missing a layer. I feel like after a certain period of time, I'm going to get bored of it. To kind of move in, paralyze, sweep the healer, run away, sit back with your beam. But the beam healing is definitely unique. So if you do want that unique feel to it, almost like Mercy from Overwatch. But even then with Mercy, if you were only beaming and you could never switch to the gun, you might get bored of it after a certain amount of time, I would think. So Mistweaver is kind of just lacking the pew pew part of it at the moment, at least for me. Resto Druid, This healer is actually performing pretty badly in terms of PvE at the moment, but in terms of PvP, you're going to notice the exact opposite of that. You have a little bit of flexibility, I would say, in PvP between Necro Lord, and then you can also run Nightface for some really cheeky Heart of the Wild affinity plays. So if you're interested in trying to run some kind of gimmicky burst one-shots, Boomkin affinity, Convoke the Spirits and stuff like that, or even Feral affinity, Convoke the Spirits, and then want to switch back to a standard build with Necro Lord, you can. So you can have a little bit of nice flexibility between memeing for some fun and also competitive viability, which is awesome for Resto Druid. When you're playing Feral Affinity and you're getting aggressive on this spec, it does feel like it has an infinite skill ceiling. Maintaining your bleeds on multiple targets, trying to not get caught and stun locked in PvP really has an interesting feel to it. But more often than not, you'll end up running Guardian Affinity just because Frenzied Regeneration is so powerful, and you're going to need it to recover in a lot of emergency situations, which then makes you really beefy and tanky in PvP at the moment, so you will be competitively viable there. I like to take the risks and run Feral Affinity, even when it's maybe not the best choice, just because I like the shape-shifting effect of it. It's kind of the punch factor that Mistweaver's missing in a lot of ways, and I like maintaining my heal over time effects. So you have multiple HOT that you maintain on a target, and you need to watch them, make sure they're not falling off, make sure you're not committing too many of them to the wrong targets, so that you're not spending too much of your mana. It's kind of that heal over time allocation that makes Resto Druid have its own unique vibe and its unique feel. And I would say when you're running the Feral affinity that it is equally comparable to Discipline Priest in terms of its fun and its viability. So if you choose the most challenging route with this spec, you will feel like you've almost just got this endless pursuit of mastery. And like I said, you can switch between memes and competitive viability with the different Shadowlands builds at the moment, so you'll have some variety as well. Restoration Shaman, this spec is doing a tremendous amount of damage at the moment as Kyrian, specifically in PvE. Your Vesper Totem is just pumping out massive, insane damage at the moment. So if you want to kind of be this aggro kind of damage dealing healer, Resto Shaman is going to deliver that as well. I would say it maybe doesn't mix the best as Discipline does, because its damage doesn't heal, but switching between the two gears can be interesting. It's also kind of the spellcaster damage dealer, whereas Druid, I think it was like the melee attacker, Paladin is the melee attacker, Mistweaver is the melee attacker, and Shaman's going to be more of the zapper. In PvP, you're going to have a lot of fun with the Earth Elemental legendary and summoning in an Earth Elemental with Earthquake that does pretty much as much damage as a warrior while it's currently active, and we all know how much damage warriors do. So if you want to kind of just run in and kind of slapstick, play super aggro, keep Flame Shock up, spam purges, try and pummel people down when you've got your Earth Elemental up, that's going to be a really good playstyle at the moment in PvP. You can switch to more of a conservative strategy with the Earth Shield legendary, and then having that for healing throughput and healing output. So if you don't want to be kind of full aggro meme, you have the flexibility there. Seems like a couple of shamans that I've seen have been trying Kyrian and kind of gimmicking it a bit with the Vesper Totem if you manage to pull it off successfully. And Night Fae actually can be a pretty fun pick for Resto Shaman as well, with the Fae Transfusion giving that circle effect on the ground that just starts zapping targets. So if you just want to feel like a Sith Lord from the Jedi, Resto Shaman's going to have that. And Resto Shaman, I would like maybe the importance of maintaining its Water Shield and its Mana Tide to be more relevant, because they've returned to those abilities, but it's seemingly impossible to run out of mana on this spec. So even though those abilities have been returned, I don't really feel like you feel super pressured as to when you're specifically timing them. And I would like that return to it a little bit, because I thought that maintaining your Water Shield was this unique effect for Shaman. You might get hit and the Water Shield falls off, or maybe, and then you got to refresh it, maintain it, make sure that your mana is always regenerating, and that was super fun for me, but it's kind of lacking at the moment. For me, though, Resto Shaman, I think, comes in onto the A tier. You end up a lot of times just kind of always being a chain heal spammer in PvE with healing rain down, but in PvP, it can be tough to get the aggression going. You got to really like pick your moments. You're not going to just be all out aggression like Disc Priest is, and kind of juggling those. It can be pretty stressful because you're casting a lot of the times. And people can kill your totems, and positionally you might get a bit frustrated because a lot of your defensives are oriented around totems on the ground, which allies can run out of if you're playing with no voice a lot or playing by yourself. You might get frustrated with the fact that your totems rely on your teammates to know that they're there. And they're not really not all of them are the most apparent. I think if anything, I'd like to see Earthen Wall Totem have a more defined graphical edge to it, so that players can know that, oh, the Earthen Wall is down, I need to stay in this circle, so I'm not leaving its defense. I think that would actually go a long way for making Shaman a little bit less frustrating in that regard, but I thought I should throw that in. Regardless, I do think it is a lot of fun at the moment. I think that with the healers, they've been doing a pretty good job bringing them all up into their own unique feel and pacing. I think we saw that at least in the Arena World Championship with different healer representation at the moment. Druid's definitely kind of taking the top competitive spot in terms of its own tankiness at the moment. And I think Mistweaver needs a tune-up that maybe hopefully it'll get in 10.0 in the next expansion. I'd really love to see that, specifically for Mistweaver, because the rest of the healers doing a great job. In PvE, it's again really struggle when you're looking competitive viability, because there's always a best. And again, it usually comes down to having a damage reduction cooldown, and then whoever does the most damage, let alone healing output, right? It's not about throughput at a certain point in PvE. A lot of times you're dropping healers for more damage. So healers like Mistweaver that focused on throughput end up falling off competitively because of that. But regardless, I hope that you enjoyed this list. I hope that it's helped you in making a decision to play one of these healers. And I don't think you can really go wrong at the moment playing a healer. You might get frustrated by some of the one-shot damage in PvP. At the moment, that's something to be aware of, but it's usually one of those things where it's like fool me once type of thing, where you'll die to it and be like, wow, that was kind of, I didn't like that, but you'll eventually start noticing when it's happening and then preempting it, and it'll get better. But you might have some initial jarring experience from it, but once you get past it, you're going to be able to deal with it. But it is pretty stressful. But maybe I'm that type of person too. I like it when healing is more stressful. But other than that, if you liked the video, please leave it a thumbs up. Comment down below with your thoughts. If you'd like to follow me live on twitch.tv/Supatease, I'm streaming every day at 11 a.m. PST. And I'm more often than not playing with viewers, trying to help people get their rating. I feel like I've helped maybe 10 to 20 people already in a week get to whatever rating thresholds they were. So if you're interested in trying to pump up your alt's gear or something like that, and you need somebody to play with, or you just want someone to play with in general, you can find me over there, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, twitch.tv/Supatease. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one.